The book talks a little bit about the discovery of Neptune. And the discovery of Uranus and Neptune are actually kind of interesting stories, and they tell you a lot about science. Well, Uranus was discovered by accident in the late 1700s by William Herschel. And when he discovered the planet, nobody knew what to do about naming it because they'd never discovered a planet before. And some people thought, well, why don't we call it Herschel? Can you imagine a planet named Herschel? Well, Herschel didn't want it named after him. He was a German, but he had been living in England for many years, and he kind of knew who to suck up to. So he wanted to name it Georgia Sidium, George's star, after the King of England, King George. Well, you can imagine that astronomers in other countries would not want a planet that was named after somebody else's king. So they decided to come up with a happy medium. They were going to continue with Greek mythology, Greek and Roman mythology, and since Saturn was the father of Jupiter, why don't we use the father of Saturn to name the next planet out? And that's how Uranus got his name. Now, after Uranus was discovered and they plotted its position among the stars for many years, people realized that Uranus was not following Kepler's laws of motion. And Kepler's laws of motion, they're a basic law of nature. You don't go messing with Kepler's laws. It's like messing with gravity. You don't do that. So there must be something else out there, they reasoned, whose gravity was pulling on Uranus and making its orbit a little wobbly. And so a couple of independent scientists calculated roughly where that extra planet would be, and a couple of other scientists looked for it, and they found it, and they named it Neptune. It's a bluish dot is what it looks like. I've seen it once or twice through a telescope. It's not very impressive. It's sort of the color of my shirt, but just a little tiny dot. And so they named it Neptune after the god of the watery deep. Now, Mercury's orbit also has some well-known idiosyncrasies to it that have been known since the time of Newton. And so after they discovered Neptune, they said, well, I wonder if there's another planet closer to the sun that's messing up Mercury's orbit. And some people even came up with a name for this hypothetical planet. They called it Vulcan. Long before Star Trek, okay? They named it Vulcan after the blacksmith of the gods because they figured this planet would be fiery hot. And conveniently, no one ever saw this planet, so they reckoned it was always on the other side of the sun as seen from Earth, so we could never see it. Well, it turns out that there is no such hypothetical planet Vulcan or any other name on the other side of the sun. When Albert Einstein, the guy with the funny hair, we'll talk more about him later when we talk about black holes, but when Albert Einstein came up with his general theory of relativity in 1915, oh look, there's a planet walking across my laptop. That was Venus, everybody. Yeah, that's her name. And her brother's name is George. Yes, named after the planet that would be Uranus. Anyways, as I was saying, when Albert Einstein came up with the general theory of relativity in 1915, he figured out that the way that the sun would warp space and time is exactly the way that you would need to get Mercury to orbit the way that it does. Mystery solved.